Hi Shay, how you doing? All right, thank you so much for including your banner. So I think the concept, it's close enough. I mean, it was smart of you to include an image that had kind of same conceptual ties as the first image that you have chosen to use for the magazine ad, and that's pretty much, an individual sitting in the sun, kind of looking up toward the sun, viewed from the profile from the left hand side of the individual. So that's pretty tight conceptual ties. So I've got no problem with the adaptation from the magazine ad to the banner ad. I think it's actually was a pretty clever way of confronting that issue that you had mentioned, and that's good. That's pertinent stuff because that points to learning. And one of the things that I say a lot to students is you take a look at your workflow for this assignment, and you look back and you say, okay, what would I change if I were confronted with this assignment again, this exact same project, right? So I'm sure that you would take into consideration the original image. Is it adaptable? Is it versatile enough to A, use it with type, and B, to be able to crop the magazine into the banner with the same image? So these are all things that point to learning, and I think it's really fantastic. And one of the things I look for is in this class as the class progresses is, do students have this ability to be able to look and see where they've the design decisions they've made thus far, and understanding how, if those decisions were changed, how would it affect the outcome of the project? And that's pointing to making those conceptual changes to avoid additional issues down the line when you're working on a campaign like this. Okay, that was a mouthful. I hope that makes sense. It's pretty relevant stuff. So I was really glad to see that. So let's go ahead and take a look now. Don't have the magazine ad included here, so we'll just take a look at the banner ad. I think the banner ad looks good. I think you're going to find a lot of designers that don't like the use of drop shadow on type, and technically it can cause some production problems. I mean, I'm not a great big fan of drop shadow on type. If you take a look at this week's announcement, you'll see that I had posted an announcement has to do with stroking type. The same thing can be said for drop shadows. I mean, a much, I think, more clean technique here is to duplicate the type, send it behind the original type, change the color, and offset it. So you're kind of building your own drop shadow. Excuse me. The problem with drop shadows is if you don't get in there and fine tune them, they usually come out, I think, a little too drastic. I think the default settings in Photoshop, and specifically drop shadow, is a little too much. So you may consider. I don't really see it as being a big problem here because of the fact that your background is so clean. So it's not really interfering with the reading very much. So it's not a horrible issue at all. But one thing I do find problematic is this. Don't forget, if you dig deep in that, you don't even really have to dig deep. The third or fourth sentence in the rubric indicates that the only thing to be animated in this banner ad is the call to action. And the reason that requirement is there is so that these kind of are inherently going to stay simple, as they should be. It's a basic campaign with an animated banner. So as you can imagine, if we don't preclude some of these animation techniques, we're going to get a lot of blinking, spinning, flashing, etc. So in that banner, I think you've displayed really good restraint here. However, you want that subhead, that headline and that subhead to remain static. The only thing you want to animate here is the call to action. That's it. And again, that is per the assignment rubric submission requirements. Okay, so really, really good job. Yeah, outstanding. That location, got to get that location in there. You don't have to include the whole contact information. You got to get that St. Thomas, U.S. Virgin Islands. You got to get that in there because that's just really pertinent information. I mean, that's important. Um, that's very, very useful information, of course, as you can imagine, to any viewer who happens to look at this ad, or any ad for that matter. So definitely include your location. All right, great job. If you have any questions, please let me know. Thanks, Shay.